Yes, sir. We are conducting almost on weekly basis.
Ah, okay. And who are all the participants? They are doing some courses with your regional center,
This
or
is yes, yes. This is multidisciplinary. We have invited students from disciplines like sociology, environmental science, uh, CSR, then development studies, social work. So it is the audience is multidisciplinary.
and they are pursuing an undergrad program or a
Masters,
certificate,
mostly masters.
mostly masters. Okay.
Bimal sir, you will start
Huh?
Yes, yes, yes.
because Saurabh is busy. He will go. I mean, he's telling he will go on 4:30, so he will start.
So respected resource person of the session, Professor Saurav Gupta ji, Center for Development Policy and Management, IIM Udaipur. My esteemed senior colleague, Dr. S.K. Panigrahi, Additional Director, sir. My esteemed colleague, Dr. Prabhat Kumar Jana, Deputy Director, sir. Dearest participants and my learners. Very good afternoon to all of you. Today, in our series of webinars, we will be privileged to listen to Professor Saurav Gupta ji. And the theme of this webinar is environment and development. It's a privilege to have Professor Gupta with us, who is a person from interdisciplinary background with specialization in sociology and social anthropology. So we are very grateful to you and very privileged that you have joined us today for this occasion. I sincerely believe that our esteemed participants and our dear learners all will gain immensely from this webinar today, that is on environment and development. That is the most beautiful yet the hottest topic reigning today's world. Whether we want environmental sustainability or whether we want development, and development means what? Economic development, social development, or development at what cost? So these are the questions they are hunting us when we are moving through the 21st century. And to enlighten us further today, we have with us Professor Sarva Gupta. So I welcome Professor Gupta to this session. I welcome all the participants, and I request my senior colleague, Dr. Panigrahi sir, to kindly welcome our resource person and our esteemed participants. Panigrahi sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Nanda sir. So, on behalf of Regional Director Bhubaneswar, on behalf of our Senior Regional Director Dr. Manoj Kumar Das, also on behalf of Indira Gandhi National University, our Vice Chancellor, I welcome Professor Saurav Gupta sir. No doubt, he is very busy person. So, out of his busy schedule, he accepted our invitation with short notice, and he is going to present his talk environmental and development. Today's topic is this. So I do feel that our learners will get benefit out of that because we are conducting series of webinar in every month. So definitely our learners is enlightened out of these topics. So whatever topic we are deciding, and we are calling the experts, they are very prominent in this field, and they are calling different part of the country. So regional center Bhubaneswar is one of the oldest center in our country. So it is the first leading centers among our country. So regional center Bhubaneswar is all the times come forward to do all such academics works, because we do feel that our students should not feel that they are studying an open and distance education. So we want to give the exposure in different kind of academic arena. So that's why your colleague academics persons to this webinars. So with these words, once again, I welcome all of you for today's webinar, and also I welcome my fellow colleagues, Dr. Jena, Dr. Nanda, and also Professor Gupta. Thank you very much. Over to Nanda sir.
Thank you, Panigrahi sir. May I now request my colleague, Dr. Prabhat Kumar Jena, to give a brief introduction of Professor Saurabh Gupta ji. Prabhat sir.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to everybody. Honorable Senior General Director Dr. M.K. Das sir, respected Additional Director Dr. S.K. Panigrahi sir, respected Deputy Director Dr. V.C. Nanda sir, respected guest of this webinar, Professor Saurabh Gupta sir, respected other dignitaries, my dear friends and learners. We are very fortunate to welcome Professor Saurabh Gupta, and we are very much thankful to him for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much, sir, and we all are keen to listen to you. Though it's not necessary to introduce him, till then let us have a brief introduction about him so that we can know a little bit about him before the start of this meeting. So, as of now, as Professor Saurabh Gupta is a socialist and a social anthropologist by training. At present, he co-heads the Center for Development Policy and Management at the IIM Udaipur. He has previously held academic positions at the Hans Ruthenberg Institute, University of Arnhem, Germany, and the Department of Development Studies, School of Oriental and African Studies. He has worked as a visiting faculty in international development at the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the Institute of Ismaili Studies, London. He has research experience in South Asia on issues relating to watershed development, natural resources management, state NGO relationship, governance, and welfare policies. Professor Saurabh Gupta has done extensive field work on agricultural transformation in Ethiopia and Ghana and sustainable livelihood for abaca producers in the Philippines. His current research focuses on sustainability-driven entrepreneurship in agribusiness sector in India. He is the author of the book Politics of Water Conservation, Delivering Development in Rural Rajasthan, and his research has been published in journals such as the World Development, Development and Change, Development Policy Review, Journal of South Asian Development, Sustainability, Food Security, Water Alternatives, Journal of Clear Production and Sustainable Production and Consumptions. Professor Saurabh Gupta received his PhD in Development Studies from University of London, and he holds a master's degree in sociology from JNU, New Delhi. His research specializations are on governance, welfare policies, natural resources management, agricultural transformation, rural livelihood, social enterprise, NGOs, and civil society. So we all are very much thankful to him, and once again we welcome him to this webinar, and we are all keen to listen him, and I hope all learners will be benefited from his experience. So we are very much keen, and thank you, sir, thank you very much, and now we will be happy to listen to you. It's over for me. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jena, and thank you, Dr. Nanda, Santoshji, for giving me this opportunity. Am I audible enough?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, so it's a privilege for two reasons. One is sitting in Rajasthan, I am able to connect with largely audience in the other corner of India. And secondly, it is always happy to meet and interact with your old friends. So Dr. Santosh Panigrahi and myself, we were students of MA Sociology in JNU together between 98 and 2000. So I really feel delighted to connect with him again through this webinar series that the IGNOU Bhubaneswar Regional Center is organizing. I would like to share my screen. Just let me know whether it is visible or not.
Okay.
स्विच कर देंगे अकाउंट तक और नहीं स्विच कर देंगे मोबाइल ये तक डेस्कटॉप
कहतु देखो
पहले हटे दे दो
हाँ
पहले
Is it visible?
not yet sir.
Okay.
Are you presenting sir?
Yes, is it visible now?
It may come.
Yes, yes.
Yes, now it is visible. Yes.
It's visible.
It's visible, sir.
All right, thank you. So today's topic of discussion is environment and development debates, and we would like to take a look at it from a historical perspective. Now, this becomes relevant because currently, if you look at the global world order, the most contentious topic in the last few weeks has been tariffs, isn't it? So, the President of the United States of America is of the view that many trading nations who are or who have been trading with the US for a long time have been doing it on their own terms at the cost of the interests of the USA. Now, economists tend to have a very different view. But I brought the issue of President Donald Trump because in his previous tenure, as well as when he was fighting the elections earlier this year, late last year, he's very fond of bringing the issue of climate change, global warming, and environment. And let me share Am I still audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm not able to move the slides. Just give me 1 minute. How to go to the next slide? I will try again. Can you see the slide?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
For some reason, I'm not sure why I'm not able to share the PPT. I have sent a PPT to Dr. Panigrahi. If it could be shared at that end, can someone try? Or okay, I will share the slides later on, but can you please tell me if I'm still audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So can I go ahead with just without the slides?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I was mentioning about President Donald Trump and the fact that he's time and again bringing the issue of global warming and climate change in his speeches and comments. And he believes that environmental degradation, climate change, and global warming are not real issues. Okay? This is a hoax. So let me quote what he said in his run up to the presidency. He said that the weather has been so cold for so long that the global warming hoaxsters were forced to change the name to climate change. Also, it's freezing in New York, so where the hell is global warming? Then he changed his statement and he said, I don't think it is a hoax. I think there is probably a difference, but I don't know that it is man-made. Also, that the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive. So from all these statements, it is quite clear that the issue of environment and development is a deeply contentious issue. It's not simply the matter of scientific evidence versus popular perception, but it is the matter of interest of various stakeholders. So in today's presentation, I'm going to begin by looking at the environmental problems, global warming and pollution, and then analyze two concepts which are key to the debates on environment and development, and that is eco-scarcity and environmental Kuznets curve. After that, we'll look into how the debates on environment and development have evolved and changed between the period of 1950s to 1970s. And during that period, what were the environmental challenges in the global north and what were the challenges in the global south? After that, we'll look at the rise of global environmental politics from 1980s onward, and this is crucial because the term sustainable development got coined and then later on propagated from 1980s on. After that, we'll look at another concept which is known as environmentalism of the poor. And this is important because, as I mentioned just now, the issue of environment is about the interests of different stakeholders. So, for example, forest dwellers versus mining companies, rich versus poor, urban versus rural, agricultural versus industry, and so on and so forth. And finally, we'll take a look at how transnational corporations or multinational corporations, large corporations, how do they incorporate the agenda of environment. But let me ask you, am I still audible? Can I move on?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
if we look at the global trends in terms of population, consumption of fossil fuel, carbon dioxide production, and wastewater, we see a rapid rising trend. So, for example, after 2040, so in about 15 years' time, it is estimated that the world population will stabilize. Okay, but by that time, the consumption of fossil fuel, petrol, diesel, etc., coal, that is going to increase exponentially with the increasing purchasing power. Okay, with the growth in countries which are now developing, particularly in India and China. And subsequently, it is also evident that it will also generate a lot of waste, isn't it? So the global trend is of enormous consumption of fossil fuels, carbon dioxide, solid waste in the next 15 to 20 years. If we look at greenhouse gas emissions, can you tell me, anyone, which is the world's largest producer in terms of country of greenhouse gases? Any idea?
China,
China. Number two?
India,
Not really. So it's China, followed by United States of America,
Europe,
followed by European Union, combined, followed by Russia, and then India. India is at number 5 if we take EU as one block. But that doesn't tell you the entire story, because China and India are also home to at least 30% of world population. So if we look at per capita emissions, the per capita emissions of India and China are much, much lower in comparison to countries like USA, Australia, Canada, and Russia, or European Union. For example, the per capita emission of CO2 in tons is 23.4 in the USA. In the case of India, per capita emissions 1.7 tons of carbon dioxide. So that leads countries of the global south to argue that although in terms of as a percentage of global total, our share seems to be quite high, but if you look at the per capita emissions, we are not the biggest culprits. You see my point? Is this clear? Can anyone tell me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. It is also true that if we look at disease burden, or let's say diseases caused by unsafe water, they are largely located in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and some parts of Latin America. So the countries of the global south, although they are not the largest polluters, but they are the largest victims of environmental degradation, and they unevenly carry the burden of diseases due to environmental degradation, water, sanitation, hygiene, etc. If we look at the severity of air pollution in India, you are all familiar every year. So starting from next month, October and November, around the time of Deepavali, the air in National Capital Region becomes so toxic, that it is categorized as hazardous. The severity of air pollution in India is also mainly concentrated in NCR and the nearby areas. Now, I wanted to share these facts and figures to highlight the point that the issues related to environmental degradation, global warming, climate change are not hoax, as President Donald Trump would want us to believe, but very real. And populations in the global south, in the developing countries, such as India, they bear the brunt of environmental degradation much more than the countries where, if we look at per capita emissions resulting into climate change and global warming, is the highest. So that leads us to look into how environmental problems have evolved and changed over a period of time. So let's say if we look at the period after the Second World War, because that is when, more scientific evidence started coming in. It was the period of rapid industrialization after the Second World War in the global north, and issues related to environment gained a lot of traction and public attention. But before looking into how environment and development debates have evolved and changed since the Second World War, I want to step back a little bit and would like to ask you, anyone can answer that. Is there anyone who has heard the name of Thomas Malthus? Malthus? Anyone? Have you heard of this name?
No, sir.
None of you? Malthus was a British demographer, geographist, and he very famously predicted that.
Malthus of population.
Very, very good. Can you say your name again? Who Malthusian, yes, about population. Can you explain what was his main idea? Okay, so Malthusian theory of population expansion.
Of food.
Sir,
Related to food grow arithmetically.
Yeah,
Related to population, their growth, and related to their food.
very good.
sir, without street limit and reproduction, humankind, betterment of humankind is impossible.
Very good. So that is Malthusian prediction, and many scholars of environment and ecology, they have borrowed Malthusian ideas, and they tend to analyze an environmental crisis or ecological crisis based on this Malthusian idea of population which is responsible for environmental catastrophe. For example, according to this viewpoint, when human population grows out of proportion to the capacity of the environmental system to support them, there is a crisis for humans because their numbers will fall through as a result of starvation, famines, etc. But also a crisis for nature, whose overused resources are driven past the limit of self-renewal. Now, can anyone tell me whether this Malthusian idea of environmental degradation or this analysis that population is responsible for environmental causes, environmental crisis, are convincing? Do you find this argument convincing? Anyone?
No, sir, I don't think population is the only reason for that.
What do you think are possible other reasons?
I think after 18th century, the rapid industrialization, because population was there. India as a country was never a less populated country.
Mhm.
So rapid industrialization rather is a reason, you know. It is directly impacting the environment.
Fair enough. Very good. Anyone else? Is there any other problem with this proposition that the Malthusian reasons for ecological crisis? Someone mentioned about environmental growth, about industrial growth.
Excuse me, sir. Migration of the people from village and rural area to urban area maximum, and that which indicates the environmental pollution. One of the greater major factor, I think.
Okay, but this is also related to population. So, for example, if the percentage of population dependent on agriculture or natural resources, if they are not able to get their livelihoods, they tend to migrate to urban areas. So somehow it is also related to population expansion. Because why would people migrate if there are no livelihoods opportunities available in the villages, in the rural areas? That's why they migrate, isn't it?
People are thinking about the modernization, all the facilities they will get in the rural urban area compared to the rural area.
Good. Yeah, that is also one of the reasons
One
for
of the reasons.
rural to urban migration. Anyone else want to give it a try whether this Malthusian idea of environmental crisis is convincing or not? All right. So we talked of two things. One is migration. So if we look at the period of rapid population expansion in Europe, which was 18th century, there was a lot of out migration from Europe to the Americas, both North America, South America, and to places like Australia, New Zealand, isn't it? So migration did not lead to ecological crisis in Europe because their population got migrated to other parts of the world. But if you look at the issue of industrialization, as someone mentioned, rightly mentioned, that since the 18th century on, we have seen, and particularly in 19th and 20th century, first part of the 20th century, rapid industrialization, first in the global north, later on followed by countries like China, India, etc. However, one major problem in the Malthusian idea that remains is again the fact that it is not necessarily the expansion in population which is leading to environmental degradation or strain on limited natural resources, but it is the fact that very few people globally consume the majority of resources. You see my point? For example, the annual per capita energy consumption of a person living in India is only 477 kilogram of oil equivalent. If we compare it with an average American citizen, it is 7,956 kilogram. If we look at per capita meat consumption in kilogram, these figures are a bit dated, about 20 years back. It is only 4 kilogram in India compared to 122 in the United States. If we look at per capita water consumption in cubic meters, it is 588 in India in comparison to 1,844 in the United States. So the question is, who is overpopulated? Is it India or is it the US? Do you see my point?
It is India, sir.
In terms of actual numbers, yes, but in terms of what people consume, which puts
Hey,
the
that is
environment,
US, sir.
it is US in that sense, isn't it? So the real issue is not population per se. If there are so many people like in India and Bangladesh, but consuming so little, that is a much lesser problem in comparison to very few people in the industrialized countries, but consuming maybe 20 times, 100 times of what an average citizen in developing countries would do. Is that clear? That is the main argument. Now, is there anyone from the audience who is also studying economics? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what is Kuznets curve in economics?
Sorry, sir. I didn't know that.
No problem. Anyone else? Kuznets curve is a relationship between industrial growth rate of economy, and inequality in society. Okay. So it is argued, borrowing Kuznets' idea. So the Kuznets' idea is that as economies grow, as industrialization happens, inequality in society increases, and after a certain point, then it begins to decline. So Kuznets' curve has also been incorporated by scholars of environment to understand the relationship between environmental degradation and industrial growth. And this is called environmental Kuznets curve. Now, in simple terms, what is it? According to this proposition, at early stages of economic growth and industrialization, environmental degradation gets worse. Okay? So there will be more pollution. But after a certain level of income per capita is reached, the economy reaches a magical point where the trend reverses and environmental quality improves. Okay? And the reasoning is that when average citizen gets richer, they become more prosperous, they begin to demand environmental goods such as clean water and clean air, and also technology and newly generated wealth will allow countries to clean up the mess of past generations. Okay? So the idea is, as countries become richer, there will be more environmental pollution, degradation, but after a certain point, the trend will begin to reverse. Do you find this convincing? Can anyone tell me? Is this argument convincing?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think so?
Because day by day, people are often acquainted and demanded more materialistic things, which causes them the polluting particles
Okay.
getting closer to human society.
Okay.
it also enhances the production of that plastic and non-degradable material industrialization.
So as countries will become richer, they will start
We got
paying
more
attention to these things, and
materialistic things.
it will reduce the mass. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. That happens in a lot of places. But if we look at globally, what has happened?
The war-like situation, sir, is contributing a lot.
War-like situation is contributing a lot to environmental degradation.
Yes, sir. The weapons, the
Okay.
experiments, and wherever a country is economically sound and have enough money for doing this kind of experiments, globally it contributes a lot towards degradation of this, environment.
Fair enough.
And
So what we find is that it is not that if countries
Developing
become
country, in a developing country, due to their higher living standards,
yeah.
the environmental pollution occurs, and the use of the natural resources, highest amount of use of natural resources also occurs due to their high living standards. And after a certain points, the developing country, increasing the inequality, and the developed country decreasing the inequality.
Okay. What happens is that it's not,
Corb.
yeah, it's not straightforward, because there is no magical point when this trend begin to reverse. For example, if you take at the example of United States, okay, so it is quite prosperous from any global standards, but because the per capita consumption is also very high, what they have been able to do is they have been able to shift polluting industries to the global south. Okay, so they have cleaned up their environment, local air pollution, water pollution, etc., because polluting industries do not operate there, but they have displaced their waste to other parts of the world. Do you see my point? So at the global level, if we do not check the pattern of consumption, we'll find only displacement of waste, not the actual reduction in degradation of environment. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
All right.
One thing I would like to say that there is a lack of knowledge about pollution control.
Yes.
And minimizing the pollution in industrial level.
In India, is that what you are saying?
And over the world, no research that much of facilities has been enhanced by the developing countries, neither in developed countries.
Okay, so I would say that the awareness about industrial waste is increasing. A lot of research is also taking place. Different countries have different norms. Unfortunately, what is happening, as I just mentioned, all the industries which are considered to be polluting, over the period, they have been relocated to the global south. Okay, so a lot of manufacturing, which is environmentally destructive, is now taking place in China and Southeast Asia or parts of Latin America. But you are right. Even if there is scientific evidence and research, issues of environment are so political, and I will come to it. In fact, wait for, have you heard of the problem of ozone depletion, ozone?
Yes, yes, sir.
So I will use that as an example to tell you, how industry interests of large corporations are intertwined with the global environmental politics. So if we, as at the beginning of my talk, I mentioned about the period after the Second World War. If you look at the 2 decades after that, between 1950s to 1970s, it's very important for the debates on environment and development, because at that time there was massive industrial growth in the northern hemisphere. Okay, so after war in Europe, a lot of industrial reindustrialization, construction was happening, and same was the case with the United States. During this period, it was also for the first time in human history, man was able to go out of Earth's atmosphere and take pictures of Earth. So can anyone tell me, the Indian astronaut who has recently returned from the space, what did he gift our Prime Minister? Did you follow that in news?
Yes, Sudhanshu Sukhi.
Yes, sir. I know his name, but I didn't know what he did.
Okay. So he took pictures of Mother Earth and shared some of
Yes,
those
sir.
pictures, pictures
Yes, sir.
from the space of Mother Earth, and gifted those to the Prime Minister. So in 1950s, 1960s, that was the first time, in modern times, man was able to go out of Earth's atmosphere and take pictures of Earth. Now, what is the relevance of these pictures? Can anyone tell me? If you take picture of Earth from the outside, from the space, what is its relevance? Why is it more important than, let's say, any other ordinary picture? Any idea?
Sir, I think, sir, this will show how the picture geographically changes from time to time.
Okay, very good.
Variation of the nature means greenery.
Very good. Also, over the period of time, if we keep
Yes,
on
over the
taking
period of time, that greenery comes to the light only.
that's what satellites, satellites are supposed to do. They keep taking pictures. But the most important, the most significant factor of picture of Earth from the space is that people started talking about Earth as the home, as a common home to the entire mankind. Okay. So the environment came to be cast in global terms around that time, 1950s, 1960s. And amongst developed countries, the United States, USA, set the agenda for environmental action. During that period, the Cold War between US and Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, was also at its peak. And as someone mentioned, war is quite destructive for environment. The race for nuclear weapons and destructive chemicals also started creating a major challenge. What was happening in developing countries around that time, 1950s and 70s? Can anyone tell me? In richer countries, industrialization, nuclear weapons, destructive chemicals, Cold War. But what was happening in countries like India and China around that time? Anyone?
Sir, there must be, as developing countries, they are at the initial stage, there must be constructions, must be road, must be industries, or must be something related to that. I think it might be.
Very good. So countries like India and China were suffering from rampant poverty. 200 years of colonialism made these countries extremely poor. And after gaining independence, they were anxious to catch up with the industrialized West. But they were struggling with basic needs for their expanding population, because the population growth also was phenomenally high after the Second World War in the global South. If you look at the environmental challenges in the global North, in the rich countries, the dominant idea was that state or the government can only preserve natural landscapes. Around that time, one American geographer called Paul Ehrlich, he propounded an idea. He gave a theory which is known as population bomb. That is also the title of his book. So he followed Malthusian idea, which I explained earlier, that increasing population puts a pressure on limited natural resources, which in turn is the reason for scarcity. You see my point? That resource scarcity is because of overpopulation. And he blamed countries like India and China because that's where the population growth was happening the fastest around that time. But as everyone knows, nothing of that sort actually happened. Both India and China are now on the verge of stabilizing their population. In fact, the trend of declining population has already hit China, and very soon India's population will also begin to decline. Decadal growth rate has stabilized. So in the coming decades, the decadal growth rate would be less than what actually
1.9.
in the previous decades. Around the same time, an American biologist called Rachel Carson also wrote a famous book which is called The Silent Spring. And this was the first scientific evidence to prove that a pesticide, very commonly used pesticide around that time in the US, known as DDT. Is there anyone who has heard of DDT?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now there is a global ban on DDT. That
Yes, sir.
DDT has actually entered the food chain.
Yes.
So the American agricultural lobby and chemical lobby, they were up in arms against Rachel Carson. Okay? And they started saying that, this is not scientific enough, and she's a woman. How can she be a proper scientist? There is no evidence that DDT pesticides have entered into food chain, etc. But now history tells us that Rachel Carson was absolutely correct. And as a result of that, in the coming decades, we see banning of harmful pesticides. In the global south, during this period, as I mentioned, it was the process of decolonization. Newly independent countries like India, many countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, China, they actually continued with the economic policies of their colonial masters. So many of these countries reoriented local economies towards mining, logging, export of cash crops like cotton, tea, peanut, without any environmental considerations. Because for many of these countries, this was the only option to increase production and raise income and exports. Okay? And in many of these countries, the multinational corporations of the rich countries were still active. They mainly controlled the natural resources in most developing countries. In 1960s, 1970s, a very important change in agriculture in India took place. Can anyone tell me what was that change? What was that transformation? 1960s, 1970s in India, agriculture in India.
I consider that is the Green Revolution talking about.
Very good. So, Green Revolution, to a large extent, solved the problem of food availability. But at the same time, it also has had its flip side. So, for example, the use of chemical fertilizers in Asia increased 38 times, 38-fold compared with the world average during this period. We also saw grassroots environmental movements in India in early 1970s. Can anyone give me example? One very important environmental movement, grassroots environmental movement in 1970s in India. I'm sure many of you must have heard of it.
Chipko movement.
Chipko movement.
Very good. Chipko movement.
To Sarvodaya, and then it created, Jayaprakash Narayan and everything.
Yes,
Everybody
yes.
related to that.
So a lot of grassroots environmental activism around that time. And at the same time, it was possible for rich countries, because consumption in rich countries was increasing tremendously, and they were not able to grow each and every crop. They were not able to mine each and every mineral which is required to sustain their high standards of living. So the poorer countries, or the countries of the global south, which we now call developing countries, supplied those resources. Okay. What was happening in China? China started following industrialization after the so-called Great Leap Forward, the Maoist idea. And they used, second best technology, which was not very environmentally conscious. It was not a very good technology in terms of environmental, sustainability, but they needed low-cost energy, and that is how, by using coal and not very sophisticated coal plants, they made sure their energy requirements. Now, this resulted into deforestation, because in order to mine coal, in many parts, you have to deforest the land. This led to about 50 million acres of forest in China deforested. Overall, since 1950s, we have seen that half of the world's tropical forests have destroyed, and a major part of that has been cleared for agriculture, for food production. But this food production is not for human beings. For example, in large parts of Latin America, particularly in Amazonian rainforest, forest land is being cleared to produce maize, corn, and soya bean, not for human consumption, but for either biofuels or to feed the cattle, which can later on be used in fast food chain. It is also true that during this period, the developing countries became the dumping grounds of industrial waste. Yeah. So if you look back into my presentation, I mentioned about cleaning your own vicinity, your own neighborhood, but dumping the waste into developing countries. So that is what we witnessed until 1970s. Come 1980s, very important period where we can trace the origins of global environmental politics. So the first major environmental conference, global conference, actually took place in the year 1972 in Stockholm, and it is called UN Conference on Human Environment. Now, the Stockholm Conference was to provide a framework for all human environmental problems and to identify aspects of environment that could be solved through international cooperation. It began as a problem of acid rain in Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and they thought that it requires global action because they were not responsible. It was the industrial, pollution from other parts of Europe which was causing acid rain. So that's why they called for a UN conference, that issues of environment are cross-border and therefore we need a global negotiation. But soon after the announcement of the conference, the tension rose between industrialized countries and industrial countries, and also the former Soviet bloc and the liberal democracies. Rather than just a pollution conference, countries like India and China actually succeeded in reorienting the agenda of Stockholm towards the question of development. Now, China saw the conference as an opportunity to position itself in the arena of multilateral diplomacy. China was expelled from the UN after communist takeover, and they got entry back only in 1971. So for them, it was an opportune moment to assume leadership on behalf of developing countries. The end result of Stockholm Conference was the creation of UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. But a lot of estimates suggested that the resources, financial resources, which are required to take concerted global action against environmental degradation, many of the developed countries were not quite willing to supply that. 1980s and 90s were a period of great turmoil. It was, the world became unipolar, after the collapse of the Soviet Union in late 1980s. There were some major industrial disasters also in 1980s. One of them in India. Can anyone tell me major industrial disaster in India in 1980s?
The
Bhopal
Bhopal
gas
gas
Bhopal gas tragedy. One nuclear accident took place in Chernobyl, which is now in present. And there were incidences of droughts in Africa. During this period, we also saw some big advances in scientific research, technology, genetic engineering, etc. So around this time, also new scientific generated related to global warming, ozone layer depletion, biodiversity loss, all of which demanded global action. As a result of that, we see second major UN conference. It is called Conference on.
Sir, your voice is not coming clear.
Sir, your voice is not audible properly.
So maybe someone, is it clear now? Is it better now?
No, sir.
So someone needs to, because the voice is echoing otherwise.
It's a echo. Your voice is going to echo.
Yeah. So can I request everyone to mute your mic?
I request all the participants to kindly mute themselves. The echo is there because of some other microphone being on.
Yes.
So kindly all of you mute yourselves except the speaker. Thank you.
Is it better now?
It is
Yes.
clear now.
Okay. So after the 1983 World Commission on Environment and Development, second major conference took place in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. It's called United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, followed by Johannesburg Conference in 2002, which is called the World Summit on Sustainable Development. Now, in all these conferences, one major point of contention is the difference and interests of the rich countries and the poorer countries, the developed countries and the developing countries, the global north and the global south. Okay. For example, in the Rio conference, differences emerged between industrialized countries and developing countries. And this was evident in negotiation on environment. So the then Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad, he argued, and I quote, When the rich chop down our forests, build their poison belching factories, and scout the world for cheap resources, the poor said nothing. Indeed, they paid for the development of the rich. Now the rich claim a right to regulate the development of the poor countries, and yet any suggestion that the rich compensate the poor adequately is regarded as outrageous. As colonies, we were exploited. Now, as independent nations, we are to be equally exploited. So the real issue is, who is going to pay for the growth, regeneration of tropical rainforests because they act as carbon sink, or the transfer of green technology because green technology is owned by private companies, it is not public property. So in most international negotiations, we see that these two are the most contentious issues. At the beginning, I mentioned about the controversy related to ozone depletion, and I will take that as an example. So the first scientific evidence linking chlorofluorocarbons to ozone depletion, ozone hole, emerged in 1980s, and the largest producer of CFC was an American multinational company called DuPont. So DuPont started lobbying the US government against banning of chlorofluorocarbons. And they were successful for good 10 years. So the first scientific evidence, and when the banning of CFC, especially in rich countries, it was good 10 years. During this period, DuPont were able to develop alternatives to CFC. So they stopped producing CFC products. But their European counterparts were lagging behind. They did not have CFC alternatives. So the same company, DuPont, started lobbying the US government to put a ban on CFCs. So when we look at this example, it makes us to believe, whose agenda prevail. When it comes to environment, it is rich countries versus poor countries, the rich versus the poor, the resource-dependent population versus the affluent population who are consuming resources much more than the others. So that leads us to the last point of my presentation, which is the idea of environmentalism of the poor, popularized by Ramchandra Guha, very famous Indian anthropologist and historian. He says that in rich countries, environmentalism is a product of affluence. When they were developing, they were not worried about environment, they were not talking about environment. Environmentalism in the global north has emerged after industrialization, post-industrialization. But in developing countries, environmentalism has emerged in a relatively early stage in industrial growth. And he further says that environmentalism in developing countries cannot ignore issues of poverty and social justice. And he says that there are two types of people, which he called omnivores and ecosystem people. Can anyone tell me what are omnivores? Have you heard of this term, omnivores? Anyone? Omnivores are at the top of the food cycle. Yeah.
Yes.
Who can consume everyone else. They can eat everyone else. So he says that in the present times, if we look at issues of environment, the state and large corporations, private corporations, they are like omnivores. Okay. And he compares these omnivores with what he called ecosystem people. Who are ecosystem people? People who are dependent on natural resources for survival. You see my point? And he says that the issues of environmentalism, they pit omnivores against ecosystem people. And also that the issue of nature cannot be addressed without social justice. All right, so this is all I had to say. If there are any questions, because I'm running out of time, I request you to send me an email. I would happily respond to the questions. But I want to thank you, all of you, for giving me this opportunity and also to listening to me patiently. I'm sorry, I could not spend more time with you, but I have another meeting lined up. So I would like to take your leave. But thank you again. Dr. Panigrahi, Dr. Nanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. Today we have a multifarious audience from multiple disciplines, and you have done justice to all. You heard the Kuznets curve in economics to the hardcore MSc Environmental Science students, chlorofluorocarbons and all other things, GHGs. So there was something for everybody in your talk, and we are really grateful. And I know that you have another meeting right now. So even though we want to be with you for some more time, I think we also need to do justice to you. Thank you once again. And I request my senior colleague, Dr. Panigrahi, to offer the vote of thanks. Over to you, Panigrahi, sir.
Thank you, Nanda sir. So once again, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Gupta. I mean, definitely he is very, very busy, and he already told to me 3 days back. So he has another meeting on 4:30. He will rush for that meeting. So to your learners, we are extremely sorry you are not taking the questions. No doubt. I mean, we know that we are eagerly waiting to ask your, query and doubt and suggestion, whatever the things is there. So we are extremely out of that. Definitely, again, you will catch Saurabh sir for another day. So
Sure.
thank you, sir.
So, sir, actually, we would like to place a submission over here is that sir has already shared the presentation with you and you have all our email IDs. So if you don't mind, sir, can you just share the presentation with us?
We will send it, sir. Send it, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you, Gupta
Thank
sir,
you.
for your time to our students and also IGNOU. Thank you very much once again on behalf of IGNOU and on behalf of my colleagues. Thank you, students also, because without you, this webinar cannot success, because you are a very nice kind of learners. All the time you are very active. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for arranging such a good, lecture for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank you very
once
much,
again.
sir. Thank you for your
And we'll meet soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello. 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 ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲ କେମିତି ରେକର୍ଡ କଣ କେମିତି ମେଣ୍ଟେନ କରିବୁ ଟିକେ କହିଦେବେ?